Back. Good to see you. Took a week off, so it's been about a week or so, but I'm back and I've got something that honestly I've really been wanting to talk about. I've been wanting to share with y'all, but did I just say y'all? Oh my gosh, share with you all. But I honestly haven't known how to even present this. But there's something happened today where I'm like, I just have to jump in and at least start this. But in all reality, like the outline I have for this video is like the fourth such iteration of either a piece that I was writing or a video outline I was creating for this topic because I really didn't know how to even begin to get into it. There's just a lot here. So this video is going to end up, I'm going to really try to keep it short. I want it to be digestible because I think this is important. This is something that I want as many people as possible to see and to engage with. And so we're only going to talk about one part of it right now. But I've been sitting on it, and one reason why it was difficult for me to know how to present it is not just because there's so much there. Like the more that I researched, the more that I looked at, the more that I thought about it, the more I realized, oh my gosh, like there is so much here. And so, everything I was writing just got longer and longer and longer. But there's another part of it where I don't know how to present it because there's different people that need to hear it and that need to engage with this idea. And so there's some people that will hear what I'm going to talk about and know exactly what I'm talking about. They're going to go, oh my gosh, yes. There's some that will say, I kind of maybe. And then there's others that will have no idea. And really the third category are the ones who I think need to hear it the most. Although it's really important for the others because it kind of gives us a little bit more of a tangible explanation. So many of us are feeling and experiencing right now. So either way, I'll get into the details here in a second. But what happened today that I was like, oh man, okay, I have to bring this up, was Barry Weiss resigned from the New York Times, and she wrote this resignation letter as a scathing letter, really, about the atmosphere at the New York Times and what led her to quit. And for those of you that are unaware, Barry Weiss was a writer there. She wrote opinion, and she was probably the last journalist at the New York Times that expressed heterodox views. So she's a centrist. She's the one who wrote the piece about the intellectual dark web, about, Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin and the Weinsteins and Sam Harris and all these other people that were, and Joe Rogan. They're just kind of these free thinkers. And she's finally been forced out and not forced to quit, but she's like, I can't stay at the New York Times anymore. And she describes why that is in her resignation letter. And so we're going to look at some of that letter here in a second. But first, I want to just kind of give you my general theory, my general idea that I want you to engage with. And then we're going to talk about just one part of it. But know that there is going to be a whole lot more that we're going to have to cover in future videos to really tease this out. But my general theory is this, is that we have that, well, first off, many of us, myself included, are feeling a general sense of like anxiety, chaos, frustration, confusion, kind of what you would maybe say is a simmering, like constant sense of disorienting, of kind of just what's going on in the world around us and in society right now. That there is just kind of the simmering like discomfort. And there's a lot of explanations for that. There's a lot of reasons. Some of them are very valid. But most people are feeling just a sense of unease about just their relationships and their maybe it's their workplace, whatever. And I think the reason for that, I think the reason we have this widespread, just kind of general sense of chaos and disorienting is because I think we have one section of society that is functioning on a macro level as an abusive partner, an emotionally abusive partner for the rest of society. And I think that most of the people actually in that category that are functioning that way don't realize it. So we have a lot of people that are experiencing this kind of as victims on the receiving end of what you would be maybe saying that they're in a atmosphere of abuse. And I think that there are people who are abusers, who are functioning as abusers. But I think there's a lot of people that are functioning as both and don't realize it. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're just going to talk about one aspect. But that's the kind of the idea I want to put in front of you, is that right now we're all experiencing the mental toll of what it feels like on some sense, or in some sense, and to varying degrees of what it feels like to be in an emotionally abusive relationship, in an emotionally abusive environment. Okay, So that's what I'm throwing out there for right now. And we're going to tease this out in later videos. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to look at, to kind of flesh out the one part that I want to look at. Okay, so this isn't meant to be comprehensive, and you'll understand the title of the video here in a second. But I want to first share an excerpt from the story of a survivor. There was a woman named Kelseys who got out of an emotionally abusive relationship, and she shared this Facebook post, and it went viral in 2018. As of like when I wrote this, so just like today, it has over 134,000 shares on Facebook. Okay, and so here's an excerpt of Kelseys' story and what she experienced in that relationship. She said, quote, "Maybe he doesn't hit you, but you have to walk on eggshells every day to ensure he is satisfied enough to remain calm and happy. Maybe he doesn't hit you, but he steals your sense of comfort and security, leaving you paranoid and crazy." So she's saying, in this environment, maybe he doesn't hit me, but I do have this general sense of I have to constantly be walking on eggshells, watching what I'm doing, watching what I'm saying, because I don't know what's going to happen if I disagree. I don't have a sense of emotional safety in this relationship. Like, there's not a lot of trust here. And so there's this simmering anxiety whenever I'm around this person. So that's Kelseys' story as a survivor of emotional abuse. So here's some excerpts from Barry Weiss's resignation letter, okay? These are various parts throughout the letter. I'm going to include a link to it in the description so you can read all this stuff for yourself and all the resources I'm about to use here. She says, "My own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by my colleagues who disagree with my views. They've called me a Nazi and a racist. I have learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Several colleagues perceived to be friendly with me were badgered by coworkers." So not just Barry was bullied, but people who even seemed like they were friendly with Barry were also bullied. And she says, "My work and my character were openly demeaned. Showing up for work as a centrist at an American newspaper should not require bravery." That's a really interesting statement. So when do people need bravery or courage? Well, you only need bravery or courage in the face of something that makes you afraid, something that's difficult, something that's fearful. So she's saying the atmosphere is such at my workplace that I have to muster courage because I'm afraid. There's a sense of fear or anxiety here. So like I have to be brave just to go to work and be a centrist. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So again, there's that atmosphere. Think about that. Just be thinking about this type of atmosphere. She says, "Part of me wishes I could say my experience was unique, but the truth is that intellectual curiosity, let alone risk-taking, is now a liability at the Times." So she's saying, I wish it was just me that was experiencing this, but everyone understands that in this environment, anything that steps outside of a set of just orthodox views, a prescribed set of ideas, it's a liability. Your job is at risk. And she said, the last excerpt here, she says, "Even now, I'm confident that most people at the Times do not hold these views, yet they are cowed by those who do." So she's saying there's a small portion of people at the New York Times that is creating this environment where people are bullied, people are demeaned, people are belittled, and you have to hold or express these certain set of views, or else you're out. And she says, later in the letter, she says self-censorship becomes the norm. That's what people are doing at the New York Times. And that word cowed, by the way, it means to make someone to submit to your own wishes by intimidation. So she's saying there's an environment of fear and intimidation at the New York Times of what happens if you express any differing opinions or any differing views than what are the approved of views or opinions. And people are belittled. She's like, I was bullied. And again, this is her resignation letter. She's like, I can't work in this environment anymore. I quit. Okay. So that's the environment Barry described. Think about the environment Kelseys described. I feel like I constantly have to walk on eggshells because I have to make him happy. I cannot do or say anything that might be out of line with what this person wants. So Kelseys, as a victim of abuse, that's what she experienced. Barry saying, this is the atmosphere I was in. If you step out of line, you're toast. That sounds very similar to me. So let's look at just some of the characteristics of abuse as given by, there's some different resources here. I'm going to give you the links to all of them. And we're going to see if any of that makes sense as kind of an explanatory factor, or maybe fleshes out a little bit of Kelseys' story and Barry's story and what I'm positing here of what I think many of us are experiencing. So the National Domestic Violence Abuse Hotline, They were a hotline for women who were experiencing this back in the day, but now they have a website, of course, and they give a list of what are the maybe telltale signs if you are experiencing emotional abuse. And here's a few of them: calling you names, insulting you, or continually criticizing you. If they insult, demean, or shame you with put downs. If they use intimidation and verbal abuse to control your thoughts or actions, you might be in an abusive relationship. Those are a few of the things you might experience if that's what's going on. So think about what Barry experienced at the New York Times, right? Just constant threats, constant bullying for not conforming to every little thing. So Very Well Mind, this is a mental health resource that's curated by doctors and therapists. It's a really good resource for people with a variety of mental health issues. And one of the reasons why a lot of these resources have to do with mental health is because this is taking a mental toll on all of us. That's my point here. But this is one of the things they talk about. Again, you might be in an emotionally abusive relationship if they expect you to share their opinions and you're not permitted to have a different opinion. If they refuse to acknowledge or accept your opinions or ideas as valid. Like, you don't even get to have an opinion. If it's different from mine, it's not valid. If they behave so erratically or unpredictably that you feel like you are walking on eggshells. Again, there's that eggshell, like you constantly have to be careful and monitor what's going on. Then you might be in a relationship. The United Kingdom's leading mental health nonprofit. Again, these are mental health resources because this is a mental health issue in terms of the effects that it has. An emotionally abuse thing that's a mental toll that it takes on you. That of course then translate often to physical toll. So they give a little bit of a snippet I wanted to include of a survivor story also similar to Kelseys. This is just one sentence I wanted to read, so I think it's informative here. It pertains. She said, quote, "Danger was implicit and always there. I was to be made aware of a sense of fragility in the relationship, the growing cracks that I needed to tread delicately on due to the risk of ending it if I didn't stay in line." So there's that sense of I have to constantly be cautious. I'm aware that I'm now in a minefield, and I have to be very careful that this is a delicate thing. Think about that in the context of the workplace. Of if you feel like your job is at risk if you step out of line in any way, of just opinions, not job performance, but just opinions. And then the way that meant that UK's mental health website explains that is, again, they say, well, this is a telltale sign here because if you are in an abusive relationship, probably if you feel you have to walk on eggshells and monitor everything you say and do, if you're afraid to bring things up because you're not sure how the other person will react. So if you know that if I express something that's different than what the other person or party or group thinks, then it will be met with extreme repercussions. There's this constant implicit threat, as an unnamed person, as the one survivor said. There's just an implicit threat constantly simmering of what happens if I step out of line, if I express anything any different, if I distinguish myself in any way from their views or opinions. Then that's an abusive atmosphere. And that's the idea that I want us to sit with right now, and that's the extent of what I'm going to explore here today, is this idea of walking on eggshells constantly, of feeling like you are afraid to express any differing views or opinions, and not even express something different, but just to have a doubt about view A. So it's not even someone says, I have view A, and you say, well, actually, I have view B. You don't even have to submit view B. You could just say, I'm not sure that view A is right. And if you're even afraid of that, then that is an unhealthy atmosphere, and that is going to be similar in some ways to what it's like to be in an emotionally abusive atmosphere. And like, one of the reasons why I think this is really important, and why I think I sat on it for a while, because I feel a decent amount of responsibility to present it in a way that people understand what I'm saying, because I think it adds a little bit more teeth, or I guess substance, to what a lot of us are feeling and experiencing right now. You hear things about cancel culture, or Twitter mobs, and all these other things, or wrong think and thought police, and Orwellian this and authoritarian that. But really, the mental toll that it's taking on us, and why I think it's so important, is that of what is it like to be in an abusive atmosphere. I think that having that lens of understanding, oh, that's why I feel this constant sense of chaos or anxiety, is because this is what it feels like when you're with an abusive partner, except for you just extrapolate that out to basically all facets of society right now. And so I think it's really important, and that's why I want to give it in digestible chunks. But there's a lot more that we're going to go into, but this is the part I want to leave you with. And also, here's the other thing that makes it, that I think is important here, and why I think that we can all agree on this, right? If someone came up to you and said, hey, I'm with this person, you know, my boyfriend, every time I express a different opinion, he blows up or he makes me feel stupid. Like, I feel like I can't say anything different. I feel like I can't disagree. I feel like I can't have my own views or opinions. Like, you know, I'm demeaned if I express anything different or any doubt about what he says. You would say, get out of that relationship. That's unhealthy. You know, that's borderline abusive, man. Like, you don't want to be in that relationship. So I think because all of us would agree on that, then this gives us something that we can unify on of like, oh, if people are making other people feel this way, even if it's unintentional, then we need to address it and address it soon because it's taking a mental toll on us. But there's a lot more that I want to cover. So some things we'll cover in future videos, like just the mental manipulation. How does loss of employment play into this? Like in terms of people that are cowed into silence, as Barry Weiss talks about, like the power of gaslighting. So gaslighting, we hear that term thrown around a lot. People on the left and on the right throw around the term gaslighting a lot. But one place that you will find it used extensively is in the context of emotionally abusive relationships. Why is that? Because it's a strategy of emotional abusers. It's a real thing. That National Domestic Violence Hotline has an entire page on gaslighting as a resource. They're like, this deserves its own like explanation here because it's a serious thing. So what does that look like? What does that mean on a mental level for us? Let's remove ideology and just look at what does it look like for this to happen generally without looking at, you know, left, right, you know, progressive, conservative, anything like that. That's one. The power of shame and guilt is another thing I want to go into, is how is shame and guilt used by abusers as a way to mentally manipulate people. And the last one is that I'll just say this is something I want to talk about is the macro levels. I want to explore how do people get sucked into this. So I made a claim earlier that there are some people who are victims and also functioning as abusers without realizing it. I want to back that claim up. I want to look at how do organizations or subcultures develop different trends, organizational habits, things like that, that where a person could become something or start doing things without realizing what they're doing. So they're on the receiving end of it, of the people in their group, and to people outside of the group, they're functioning as someone who's distributing that characteristic or that tendency. And so I want to look at the macro level and how that might happen, and how I think, like I said, I think most people that are both victim, functioning as both victim and abuser, don't realize that they're in that category. But I want to substantiate that claim. So the last thing I'll say here is all of this, again, it's really worth noting, is that this is all about patterns. I've been starting to bring this up on Twitter a little bit, and every time I get a decent amount of traction, I pick up followers because people resonate with this. But I have had some criticisms, and one guy said, well, critiquing is not abuse. Like, disagreement isn't abuse. In fact, like, arguing and dialectic is an important part of the Socratic method. Like, what are you talking about? And that's an important distinction. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't make them an abuser. Just because someone critiques you or even might call you a name once doesn't make them an abuser. Like, that is not what that is. Or if someone even reacts or overreacts to something, like, that doesn't make them an abuser. This is about patterns. This is about, like, if I am around this person, this is what I can reliably expect out of them. This is what has been the established pattern in their behavior and the dynamics of their relationship. And this is the atmosphere they create as a result of these patterns. So what I'm not saying is just because someone disagrees with you, you're being bullied or, you know, you're being abused. That's not what I'm saying at all. Absolutely not. This is about patterns of how someone functions as an abuser when you are not allowed to step outside of their views or express anything different. You know, I'll leave you with this. I wrote an article about a month or so ago, which is where I first started with this idea, really, was over a month ago. And it was about the importance of no in relationships. I had a mentor who in college told me one of the hallmarks of a healthy relationship was the ability to give and receive no in that relationship. Well, why is that? Because giving no means that you feel comfortable asserting yourself as a different person. I have different views, I have different perspective, I have different preferences, opinions, beliefs, whatever, and I'm asserting that. I'm saying my whatever that thing is different than your whatever that thing is, and I feel comfortable expressing that. And a person who receives no well, is able to receive no, is saying, yes, I acknowledge that there are different views, beliefs, perspectives, opinions, preferences than my own, and that's okay. They can hold those honestly. That's all right. Like in other words, it's okay for us to agree to disagree. And this plays into all of that, because what we're talking about here is patterns and atmospheres where that is not allowed. And that if you do that, you know that there is a threat behind it. Maybe you're going to be ostracized by your friends. You're going to have your character publicly demeaned, like what Barry talked about here and others have experienced. Maybe you're worried you might lose your job, all of those other things. This is about the atmosphere as a result of these patterns and this kind of the general milieu here, okay? So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to give you all the resources for everything I cited here in the comments of this video and in the description where I put it out. Please feel free to check into that stuff, agree, disagree. I want your thoughts on this, but I think this is really important because it gives us, there are so many people that feel this way, and it gives us a lens of, oh, that's why I feel like this. Not that I'm some, like, I'm just being beaten up all the time, but there's an emotional and mental toll that this is taking on a huge portion of the population. I think it's important that people can actually go, oh, yes, I understand why I feel that way now. But give me your thoughts, give me your feedback, give me your criticisms in the comments. I'm going to put all the resources here. You can check my work and see if you agree, disagree, whatever. If this is the kind of thing you like, please follow me on Twitter. That's at MyMundaneMind. I'm going to be posting this and other stuff, written content, links to it on my Twitter, but also on my website. That's at returntoreason.locals.com. I'm building a community over there. It's really cool. There's lots of people engaged. There's lots of creators like myself. There's artists. There's people that are, comedians, all this other stuff, cooks, people would just share recipes and stuff. It's a really cool thing. So go to Locals, create an account, returntoreason.locals.com, join my community. It's really cool. It's more about conversation and having a community than me just sharing my crap out there. So I'd strongly encourage you to do that. Subscribe to my YouTube. That's at Return to Reason. This is on Spotify, Return to Reason there, and I think also on Apple Podcasts. So please follow that. Again, I'm going to be making another video. I don't know which direction I'm going to take it because, again, there's a lot of different angles here. It might depend on the feedback. But I have probably 3 that I'm going to go into, maybe only 2, but to further kind of expand out on this. So I'm interested to hear what you have to think. That's it. I'm not going to ramble anymore. You guys have a good one, and I will check you later. Peace.